So today's going to be about change and transitions, or some people might call it task switching. So think of like why would I choose this topic as a coach right now? Because guess what? If you're not totally hitting your speed or your baseline yet, we just had a big transition, right? I mean, the holidays and that kind of downtime to now it's January and it's like, hey, you got your New Year's resolution, and it's like you're expected to just be on it and ready to go, and that's not always. I mean, I think even without ADHD, it's normal for that kind of change to happen or maybe not happen the way you want. And so in anything, right? So that's what we're talking about today is just transitions and change, because with ADHD, and we'll talk a little bit about being on the autism spectrum too, or task switching, all of that stuff has different elements for us as a neurodivergent agent or business owner around that. And that's what we're going to talk about, because it's a thing. It really is completely a thing with the task switching. And if you know what it is and you have your tools, or maybe you just adjust your expectations slightly, what you're going to find is that it's going to be a much easier way of doing things, and you might actually get to what you want to do faster. So that's the other element too, is it's being able to handle change quickly is a really positive thing, because you're going to do better in your business a lot faster. That's going to be another significant thing. So if you are not up to speed yet on January 14th, and you're not just crushing it with your business, that's normal. It's okay. And it's absolutely something that a lot of people are experiencing. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk about the 7 types of transitions. Then we're going to talk about the anatomy of a transition of itself, like what are the different phases, and then 12 tips for smooth transitions. And this is actually Untapped Brilliance. I'm going to put I'll put the link in the notes. I'm going to drop it in the chat. When I was researching this, usually I look at different articles and I will like kind of do the summary of a lot of them. This one was so good that I'm really going to be doing a lot of what's on here. So if you want to, I just put the link in there. If you want to revisit this or get more of the details, you can find it there. But they did such a good job with this article, so we're going to make sure to obviously give them credit. But they just did so well. So I'm gonna, and I guess it's Jacqueline Sinfield is she's an ADHD coach. So credit to her, because this is a wonderful article. I don't know if she wrote this or whatever, but so really, really well done. And I want to kind of go through each piece with you, and then we'll be talking about too, just from a coach's perspective, what's normal, because when we look at like task switching, what is that? What is transitions? What is task switching? It's really when you're going from like one task to the next. I mean, if you want to look at the definition of transition, as it says in the article, passage from one form, state, style, or place to another. And for us, it can be a lot of extra elements with it, right? Because our brain's wired a little bit differently. And so we might be totally locked in on something. The dopamine's flowing and we're hyper focused on something, and like disrupting that is really hard. You might be on the autism spectrum, which is really common with ADHD, where we take in way more stimulus, like 70% more stimulus than the average population. And so it can be really overwhelming, and sameness can be really comforting for our nervous system, because it's predictable, because so many things are not, and we have so much data coming. And so that can be difficult, or just plans that change last minute. That can be hard. Time management, or like, right, time blindness, gauging how long things take and having a plan and really trying hard, and it's changed really quickly. There's so many things with neurodivergence and change. Like, this is a thing. And there's certain things that you might think are one thing, but it might be task switching. And a big one for that, anybody experience with procrastination, right? Or something you need to do, right? Like, we all experience that. So I want to throw some, maybe it's that, maybe it's executive dysfunction stuff, or maybe it's actually task switching. So I'll give you an example, and this is a normal one. You need to take a shower, right? And you keep pushing it off. I need to take a shower. For some people, that is a big change because our sensory stuff is more heightened. And so you're changing from the temperature in the air to the temperature of the shower and the sensory stuff. And you might be cold after, or you might be warm. It's like there's a meme where it's like, no, the wet world, I don't want to go in there. And then it's after you take a shower, it's like, oh, I don't want to go in the dry world. Ew. Cause like, it's like this, you don't want to get in, but when you're in, you don't want to leave. Right. So, that could be one. Like your workout, you might be procrastinating your workout because it's a change to your nervous system or your heart rate. It might be going to bed because you're doing something and you don't want to shift. Like if you've ever had that where it's like, oh, you push it off, but then once you're doing it, you're like, you're good. If you've ever had that where, I mean, I've done this where you don't want to stop doing what you're doing, but then you get in bed and it's like, man, this is so comfortable. Why did I wait? Like, why did I push this off? So I think task switching and change and transitions are something that are under talked about a lot. And I've done that as well. I just was fascinated when I really got into this at a high level that might be responsible for more things than we think. And when we, like, let's say we treat it as procrastination. Let's take the shower example or something. Let's say we treat it as procrastination, we beat ourselves up or whatever. But if we treat it as, oh, like it's because the sensory stuff is different, maybe I'll take a bath instead, you know? Or like the gym. Yeah, like Brittany, avoiding the gym because I don't want to change. Maybe, maybe you don't go do the crazy workout because it's too much of a change with where you're at. And maybe you do a walk that's a little bit more gentle. So it's this awareness. And I mean, I've definitely not mastered it, right? I mean, that's the goal. And how great, we probably never arrive. We're always learning. But that's why it's so important not to just judge and instead be curious as to where the resistance is coming from. So I think, as I got farther into this and learning about this, I just thought, man, there's so many good things in here that might give some growth and some movement on things where the typical things that I thought it was, or the typical tools I was using wasn't working. So task switching and change can show up in a lot of ways. So let's talk about the 7 types of transitions. So the first one is an environmental transition. So this is moving from one physical location to another. So you could be going from like work to the gym. You could be going from like the doctor's office to your house. It's one location to going from vacation back to home. I mean, that's a big transition. If you've ever had that where we have a trip planned, but you don't want to go because you're like in really good momentum with work, and then you go on the trip and then you don't want to go back home because you're in vacation mode. That's that's a good one. Task transitions. So switching between different tasks, especially if, and this is an important one in real estate, if you don't have a whole fleet around you as a team, you are the buyer's agent, the listing agent, the marketing person, the admin, the CEO, the financial person. Like all of those are all different tasks, and so that is a transition. Even if you're sitting in the same place in the same environment, and you're switching from doing admin tasks to lead generation and calling people, that's a switch. That's a transition. Routine transitions. So starting a new job, going on vacation, if you're with family, like all of that stuff. If just the structure changes. I mean, if you've taken a class that's all day, like Bold is one, and it's like now all of a sudden you don't have your Tuesday, but now you're used to having the Tuesday with Bold, and now it's done, and you don't know what to do. Like that's normal. As a kid, when school, I don't know if you ever had that. When school would start, I would be like depressed and kind of cry for a couple weeks, and when school would end and it was summertime, I would have meltdowns because it was a change. It was a big change. So routine, that is a big one. Number 4 is emotional transitions. So these are like um, like if you're excited, if you're frustrated, if you have anxiety, if you're angry, if you're sad, like those things transitioning from one emotion to the next is also a change, because remember, it's like your whole ecosystem is kind of shifting. And when you have a much more sensitive nervous system, which we do with ADHD, and then especially if you have autism, which a lot of us do, our nervous system is so fine tuned and so sensitive that things typically affect us a lot more than others. But you might have sensitivity in different ways, right? So one person might be sensitive to emotion, one might not be at all. One might be sensitive to transitions, or routines. One doesn't need that. So again, it's not it just kind of shows up different. But yeah, like and another one, the example for emotional transition is like the phone rings, right? And you've been in thought and now it's interrupted that. Or the plans change last minute. That's sometimes hard for me. Or that just you might feel irritated. You might feel a little dysregulated because it's not as predictable. Number 5 is cognitive transitions. So if you're thinking between different modes of cognition, so like let's say you're doing art, and then now you've got to go do math, um, and so uh, there's different transitions in just how your brain is working, right? If you're kind of free flowing and like on the weekend, and you're able to just not be as structured, but then Monday comes and you've got to be really, really structured and time blocked, that's a really big transition, you know? Number 6 is social transitions. So interacting with different types of people. So if you've spent all weekend with your family and you know what that's like, and then you go into work and you're around clients and you have a different persona, you're still yourself, but we're going to have slightly different personas where we are, because you're going to have different boundaries of what you say and the conversations that are had and different levels of that. That's a transition. If you're spending a lot of time alone, like if you live alone, or maybe you're on a retreat by yourself and you have that time alone, and then now you're around a bunch of people and a bunch of noise, you're going to have a little bit of a transition there. And then number 7, this is huge, right? Life transitions. So if you're switching brokerages, if you're switching the office where you're at, if you are a parent now, and I just saw in the comments, I'm so sorry to hear that. If you lost someone, like someone you love passed away, I'm really sorry to see that, Cheryl. So yeah, like any kind of life transition, you're moving, that's a huge one. You brought on new staff. I mean, all this stuff can be transitions, and it's happening all the time. And statistically, we can have a hard time with transition. So you can see why this is such an important call for you to have tools, because you might not know that you're going all through this and you're having to regulate all the time, and not really being able to name it. So this is really really powerful stuff. So with the anatomy of a transition, it has 3 phases to it. So the first one is you're going to have to stop doing whatever you're doing. Like whatever activity you're currently doing, you're going to have to stop, right? But if you're enjoying the task and it's giving you dopamine, like you're watching a show and you have to stop it to go to bed, or if you're working and you're calling people and you've got good momentum and you're actually doing it, but now you got to go on an appointment, So the first thing is you have to stop the activity you're doing right now. And that's the first one. And then for us with ADHD, there can be that extra element of like, well, if I stop, I don't know when I'm going to start again. If you've ever had that, it's like, I finally did it. If you've had that where you finally start organizing the closet, and like normally people would say, or let's say like a whole room, right? Normally people say, well, just do a little bit every day. And it's like, well, someday the dopamine's going to be there and someday it won't. So if it strikes, I'm just going to go until I can't stand anymore. Like I've done that before, So having to stop that task, there can be a fear around that. That can happen. And then phase 2. So one, we're stopping the activity. Phase 2, we're moving from the first activity to the second one. So now, and there's more in that. When we look at like executive function, it's unless the task is right there at hand, there's going to be some time in between that. And we have like working memory stuff. We can get distracted. So let's say I need to stop working and I need to go upstairs and I need to make dinner, right? So I'm going to stop working and I'm going to start walking upstairs. Well, the dogs could need to be let out. My phone could go off. I could have a thought, right? Because we have lower impulse control and 10 times the amount of thoughts where, shoot, I forgot to do the laundry, right? Or, you know what? I was going to prioritize the gym before dinner and I forgot that. Where are my shoes at? Oh, I left them in the car. Where's my keys, right? So there's this, like, we don't want to get sidetracked. And I think if you've lived with your brain since you were born, which that's all of us, there might be a hidden fear of, I'm being productive right now, and if I stop, I might get sidetracked. So that, like, I guess they call in the article, it can feel like a danger zone, because you really want to make sure that you go to that next task. So stop the activity, move from that one to the next one, and then phase 3 is you're going to start the second task. So that can feel hard because your mind might be still in the mode of the first task. Um, and especially like if you're not sure what the steps are, or like what to do next, depending on what the task is, or it's just a big change. So, sometimes there can be a challenge with that. So there are those three elements to that. The key thing is awareness, right? If I want to go make dinner and I know that, oh, this is so hard because it's hard to stop the momentum, that's why, instead of, what's wrong with you? Come on, stop, right? And then, okay, I know I could get distracted, so I'm going to go straight upstairs and I'm going to go turn the oven on, right? And I know exactly what I'm going to do. Now I've just bypassed what could have happened, which is sit here and keep setting the alarm 5, 10 more minutes for me to go make dinner, and then not be focused and then get sidetracked with the dogs. And I didn't turn the oven on and I didn't know what I was going to do. And then it's harder. So we're going to think of this. If there's some kind of task that you're switching from, you might think of it a little bit more cognitively than the average person, or the boring person, the non-ADHD. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, that can be helpful. So that's really task switching. So transitions can be in that category, or they can be a little bit more broad. So like a transition might be you're finishing up your work and then you're transitioning into your evening routine. It can be changing your physical environment. So again, task switching and transitions are kind of interchangeable in a sense, but transition might be transitioning in and out. So I want to talk about that too before I get to the 12 tips for the smooth transitioning. So with the like going in and out of stuff can be really helpful. So think about this. Is one, if you know that you're a person that struggles with transitions, or it's hard for you, or you just know your patterns, adjusting your expectations is really important. So I'll give you an example. When I travel, and it's gotten a little bit better over the years, but when I travel, because I'm on the autism spectrum as well, and everything's different because I'm in a different room. I got to find out where the water is, where the food is, the texture of the blankets, right? Because we take in so much more detail. The lights, the sound of the buzzing fridge in the room, the carpet, the sounds behind the walls. Like there's so much coming in. It used to take me sometimes 2 days, 2 full days to get regulated. And then when I'm regulated, I could really enjoy the trip. So when I would go on a trip, I would put in a buffer of 2 days because I knew that I would be regulated. Now it's gotten a lot better. I have way more skills. It doesn't happen like that. But I used to bring like a pillow and a blanket from home, so there's familiarity. I'd bring the same tea. I'd bring like a certain sweatshirt, so there's a lot of sameness. So knowing about the transitions is really helpful because one, you're going to adjust your expectations, and then two, you might put stuff in place to ease it in to that new situation. So another example is when I was coaching somebody who's on the autism spectrum who had a lot of challenge. And I'm using autism spectrum because it's more on the extreme end with transition. So this can apply to everybody. But going from Sunday to Monday is hard for some people for sure, because you're relaxing, you have time off. And then there's that Monday morning where it's like, okay, let's go, let's grind. And so what we did with this client who would have meltdowns on Mondays is Sunday night, because what you want to do is you want to do a little bit of that thing you're transitioning to while you're still in that other thing. So it's not just this black and white, okay, let's go, this is different. So we would do at like 8 p.m. every night, she would pull up her calendar and just kind of look at the week and get the mind in the mode that we're going to shift into that and make sure she liked that. And then on Mondays, instead of starting at 8 a.m., which she normally started at, on Monday, she started at 10. So it wasn't like, okay, it's Monday morning, you got to wake up at 7 a.m. or, 6 a.m. again. You got to sleep in. So we're minimizing stuff a little bit where it's just this a little bit more gentle transition. And that changed everything, because if you think of it, if you're having yourself do a transition and you're just going from 0 to 100, it may dysregulate you. It may. Again, it depends on your system, right? This may or may not apply to you, but it may dysregulate you. When you're dysregulated, you are going to use your fuel, your dopamine, your spoons, whatever you want to call it, to regulate yourself. And that's going to pull you away from the other stuff, right? Lead generation, structure, working out, like all that stuff. And so the biggest thing, instead of, man, why can't I do this? Let's push it, or let's force it, or how bad do you want it, all that stuff. It's how can we be more gentle, which I know is kind of weird when we're in this success world. But if you can get a little bit more of a gentle transition in, and it can be better for your whole nervous system. So there's not these big changes depending on how you react to stuff. So 12 tips for 12 more tips for these smooth transitions. So review your calendar daily so you know you can think ahead about today's events, what's coming in the week. It's going to help you feel more prepared and just not off guard. It can be predictable. Now, the other thing, if you have trauma, which a lot of us do, if you have PTSD, right, we have more sensitive nervous systems, we're more likely to have trauma because we take in more. There's a lot of reasons for that. Again, trauma does not cause ADHD. That's been proven over and over again, but it can be, we can be more likely to have more PTSD. So predictable things can be really helpful if you have PTSD, if you have trauma or just anxiety. Being able to predict, know what's coming can make us feel safe, our psyche feel safe. So do that for yourself, right? Look at your calendar, know what's coming as much as you can. Be prepared and just kind of have a little bit more of an idea so there's not as much of, oh my gosh, I forgot today's the appointment, right? Or shoot, this is due in 2 hours. Now, again, with our timing in our brains, with time blindness, we look at time usually in two categories, right? Now and not now. And that's Dr. Russell Barkley talks about that. And so when we're looking at our calendar and our day, what you may want to do is have some kind of habit where at the end of the day, before you're done, you take a glance at it, like something small that's really fast, and you can bunch it with something you already do. So maybe every time you get home in your car, before you go inside, you pull up your calendar, or before you leave the office, that's the last thing you do. You just take a look so there's no surprises, right? So so reviewing your calendar is going to be helpful. It's going to make you feel a little bit more prepared. And if you do have anxiety, like a lot of us do, it's going to help just calm that a little bit. So planning your day, that can be helpful. And like morning routine, if you have that, that can help you like plan for the day ahead. If that's helpful for you, even if it's, and I don't mean you've got to block in, you got to do this exact same thing this exact way. You might have just a couple of things you do in the morning that are the same that give you a sense of grounding. And those could rotate, right? But it might be that you walk for 15 minutes, which is what I always recommend, some kind of movement, because it directly targets the part of our brain, one of the parts of our brain affected by ADHD, and can keep us stimulated throughout the day. But some kind of movement, something, whether it's like time with your pets or your loved ones, sitting down, reading, whatever that is for you. And you could do all of that or none of that, right? Whatever makes your brain happy and calm and regulated. You could take a hot bath. I mean, you could watch a show. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. The goal is that you go into your day feeling just confident and regulated. So having something like that can really help. And then another thing for task switching that can help is like preparing, in a sense, like getting everything you need so you don't have to keep looking for stuff is really helpful. And then mentally, it's like a transitional spot. So for example, let's say I'm going to do some yard work. Okay. If I sit down for a second and I think of the 3 things I want to do in the yard, and then I go get the shovel, the gloves, everything I need, it's all in one place, I am much more likely to have success than just starting to go and then, oh man, where are those gloves at? And then, oh, should I do that? Wait, I forgot this. And wait, what should I do next? And we can get paralyzed. And then you're not sure, should I, clean this up or should I mow the lawn? And then you can sit and get on your phone without even knowing it to kind of regulate or do something else. Yep. And then you have a pile left, right? And it stops you from like having to go do stuff and go like get sidetracked and do something else. So if you're going to go do a project, if you're going to do something, taking a second to prepare for can be really helpful, and it can get you ready to do the activity versus just you got to do it. However, on the flip side, sometimes it's good to just do the thing and not overthink it. So again, you got to figure out what's best for your system. If you've been pushing off doing the yard work forever because you can't figure out where to start, it might be the best thing for you to just literally walk out the door and start picking stuff up, So you're gonna this is just a journey, right? You're learning your brain, you're learning what works for you. And you also might learn patterns where some days it's better to just push yourself out the door. Some days you're in a spot where you're feeling really distracted and it's not as much about the executive function, it's a distraction. Then you might gather and prepare. Number 4 is getting into gear ritual. Like if you have to sit down and do something that takes focus, like something that kind of gets you ready can be helpful. So, I mean, just something small where like putting on noise canceling headphones or writing down some of the things that you need to do beforehand, like setting a timer for 30 minutes. I don't know if you've ever done that where it's like, okay, I just need to do 30 minutes and I started the time. Okay, the timer's going. Okay, I better go do it. So it's like that little baby step where it's not just all discipline. Like make a cup of tea. I used to do that, like coaching. When I was coaching, like full time, 35 hours a week plus prep, I would have tea every morning because it's more sensory stuff, and it was like what I do before I did. But now I'm not, because I'm doing full time with the ADHD stuff, which is, by the way, incredible. Thank you. This is the first month I've ever been able to do that. And so thank you for everybody that joined ADHD Agents, because now my full-time job is you. It's amazing. So yeah, doing like little stuff, getting into gear. Another thing that has been really helpful for agents especially is we have a job where we're going go, 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 right? And it's really fun and we're on our feet. And then you go home, and if you have a calm activity, or maybe you have a family at home that you want to rev down and be really present with, that is a transition I've heard a lot of people deal with, where you're like on a high, right? And you get home and then you're back to the life. So if you have some ritual in the car, that can be really helpful, where you just rev down a little bit, you listen to music, you listen to podcasts, you journal out everything you want to do tomorrow, something where you're not walking in the door super revved up and then having to bring yourself down. That can be helpful. Same thing if you are leaving home and you're going to the office. You might have something in the car, or you might work out on the way home. Something like that, something to get the energy out. So that could be something. Anytime you notice that you're having trouble shifting. This is another one, batching. And I'm going to go a little over because I want to go detail on this. Then like the strict 30 minutes, I'll probably go 10 minutes over, and then we'll still have 20 minutes for like discussion and stuff. So batching. This is a big one for real estate agents. So when we're doing, like I said, a lot of us are, as agents, have multiple roles, right? We are the lead generator. We are the admin person. We're the financial person. We're the marketing person. We're showing houses, like all that stuff. And so in your day, when we talk about time blocking, it's really helpful to do what's called batching. So if you have activities that are the same, like admin work, if you let's say you have a bunch of admin stuff, I'll give you an example. If you did like 30 minutes of admin on this, and then you called people on the phone, and then you had to go work on something for marketing wise, and then you socialized and had to go to like an open house or broker's open house, and then you came back, and then you had to do quiet activities, that's going to be a lot harder and a lot more transitions than if you batched everything and you did all your admin in a 2-hour period. And you said, okay, I'm doing admin. That's it. I'm going to take my medicine if you take that, or I'm going to drink coffee. I'm going to put a sign on the door. I'm going to have my fidget toys ready. I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to put on music that I love, and I'm going to knock this out and really get into this mode. That is probably going to be easier on you and way less transitions than being all over the place with switching. So if you can batch quiet activities, admin activities, non-social activities together, and then people-facing ones where you're calling people, you might be talking, that kind of stuff. If you can batch those when you're doing your plan for the day versus alternating, you're gonna because it does take time to transition. And this is for anybody. Jay Papasan actually talks about this in the One Thing book. So this is for anybody. If you can batch similar type activities together, it's going to be more helpful for you, because then you can get in, the mode to call, the mode to socialize, or that like I'm in the mode, because we can hyper focus, right? So once you're in something for a little bit, you're going to have more likely the ability to be able to hyper focus once you kind of get in the groove and you get used to it, and then boom. So don't rip yourself out of it before you've hit your stride. Number 6, countdown. So this is a timer. This is really helpful. if you have that where, and sometimes like, let's say I'll give you an example. Let's say like you're laying in bed and it's warm and you're ready to go sleep, but you have to get up and brush your teeth and you want to pick up just a little bit. And that sounds terrible when you're like warm under a blanket. But if you say, okay, I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. And then when the timer's up, I'm jumping right back in the bed. I'm going to sleep. That's it. It's only 15 minutes. You can do it. Okay, ready, set, go. Instead of, come on, man, go pick up. Like, you need to. You'll feel better. That's not going to work. Like, yeah, right, I'm going to stay under this blanket. So that can be really helpful to do something like that. Just set a timer, and then you know how much. Also, with hyper focus, setting a timer is good because we can get locked in on something. I don't know, has anybody been on Canva where you're going way too detailed? Everybody's like, oh God, okay, you're like me, way too detailed on something where it's ridiculous. So setting a timer on that and saying when this timer goes off, I'm going to transition out of this is really helpful. Now, the other thing about a timer is giving yourself a little bit of notice. Well, this is the next one. So buffer time. That's great. Okay. So buffer time. So giving yourself a little bit of notice too before the transition is helpful. So like I've given this example before. I was with a great girl a while back, like years ago, who did foster care and had some like therapeutic level foster kids. And when it was time to do something, she would give them notice. They were also neurodivergent. If you came in and said, okay, we're done, turn off the TV, time to go to bed, meltdown, crazy, right? But if you said, okay, in 5 minutes, I'm going to come back down and we're turning this off. All right. So in 5 minutes, you got that? Okay. So choose what you want to watch for the next 5 minutes and we're coming down. And then, okay, it's been 5 minutes. Great job. Let's go. Right. So giving that notice, it allows the system, because a lot of kids in foster care have trauma. And of course, right. Giving that notice makes it more predictable. It's not just this big change. And then it allows us to adapt in our mind what's going to happen. And we want to do the same thing for ourselves. Same thing for ourselves. Give yourself a little bit of notice. Especially if it's like turning the show off to go to bed, that's a big transition, right? You're lively and you're doing stuff and it's interesting and you're watching stuff. And now you're supposed to just be quiet and not move and go unconscious. Like, what? So give yourself notice or some kind of routine to get into it. So the other thing that can be helpful too with transitions is giving yourself a buffer time in between. So if you're switching from one thing to the next, maybe give yourself 15 minutes to kind of ease into it or just breathe instead of just, like that. That can be really helpful too, even in your time blocking, if you need it. Again, just if it isn't broken, don't fix it, right? But if it is, maybe that's a thing. Yeah. Same thing, like, kind of what we talked about with that client about the transition from Sunday to Monday, where, you look at your calendar the night before and you don't start work until 10 instead of 8. That can be helpful. An example this article gives is when you come back from vacation, if you, this is huge actually, when you're on an amazing vacation, do not expect to go back to work the next day. Don't do that to yourself. That's terrible. Do not do that. Okay. Expect that you're going to be blah and let yourself like transition in. So if you come back on a Sunday, do not schedule appointments for Monday. Don't do it unless that works for you. But I'm always going to give myself 1 to maybe even 2 days after a vacation, especially if I'm in the Bahamas and I'm just totally out of work mode. I'm going to need a couple days because that's way too jarring, and I'm going to be emotional and cranky and struggle. And then another thing. Let's see. They said, yeah, if you are like getting in late, or something like that, like one of your last days of vacation, you might get a little organized before you get to the airport. You don't have to. You might stay in vacation mode, or just when you get to the airport, maybe then you sit and kind of think about what it's going to be like the next day. So just something to kind of, again, we want to mix the two things a little bit. I just thought of an analogy when you're mixing colors, right? Watercolors or something. You do a long line down the page of watercolors of pink and a long line of blue. Don't go from pink to blue. Mix them up a little bit so there's a little purple in there. I think that's pink and blue make purple. I think so, right? I guess red and blue. Anyways, you get the point, right? Mix them up a little bit on both sides. And then number 8, train the people in your life not to interrupt you. So like change and transition could also be you're working on something and then one of your family members comes in or one of your admins come in or your friend in the office comes in, and now you're transitioning from focus to having a social conversation back to what you're doing. So that's why building a bunker when you're doing work is very important. So train people if there's specific things to not interrupt you, or to have a time when you're available again, or some kind of where they can still talk to you, maybe not that time, right? Okay, number 9, limit surprises. So some of us love surprises and impromptu events. It's really fun. Other of us, we don't. It's like unpleasant or unpredictable. So it just depends. It could be connected to transitions. So the example they gave is your partner says, "Let's go to the movies," but you were geared up in your mind to stay home all day, and they're like, "Let's go to the movies. Let's go out. Let's go do this." So that might feel like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, I was like in the mode to stay home, and it might feel like a lot, and you might take a little bit of time to adjust to it. Or you are ready to go and you plan something out, and then all of a sudden you got to go do a showing and you were ready to work on that thing. It just might mean that that's a little bit much, like it's unpredictable or it feels a little jarring. So, if you could have your partner give you a heads up, right? Like if they know they want to be super social on the weekend, to tell you Friday that's what they're feeling, so you can get in the gear for that instead of in the moment, if you need that. Um, if somebody invites you to something last minute, maybe in your mind, if that's really upsetting to you or really hard, you might have a rule that just for your own self, you might only do stuff if there's 24-hour notice. Again, it depends on the severity of this for you. You might not need to do this at all, right? These are just things that might work. And if you have to do something, there's no way to get out of it. And if it does feel like a big transition, then you might just take a second and kind of process it. Because again, we have 10 times the amount of thoughts as someone that out ADHD, so we can actually process really fast. So know that it might be that you just might need a minute to switch in your head, and then you're fine. Like I've had that where I was gonna do like the whole day at home, and then I had a friend that's like, "Hey, I just came in town. Like, let's go play basketball." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I just put on like sweatpants. I've got like food I was gonna eat and watch a movie." And then I like sat with it and kind of got myself used to it. And I texted him, I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And then I'm ready to go, right? And he's like, "Oh shoot, man, I forgot. I don't get done. I have to stay home with." And then now I'm like, "Man, I want to play basketball." and then you got to transition back. So you can adapt. You definitely can. Sometimes it just takes us a little bit of time. And then I went and played basketball by myself. So it's kind of funny. Number 10, use checklists. So this is one. So morning routine checklist or a vacation checklist is really helpful instead of relying on memory. I know some people that literally have a checklist in the morning of what they need to do every morning so they don't forget it. Somebody has a checklist of packing. So if there's something you're doing normally, you may get a checklist instead of having to remember every time. This is another one, structure. This is interesting. So if you have a structure and a routine, your body gets used to doing things at certain times. So if you have a morning routine or a bedtime routine, or you get groceries on Sundays, something like that, your body's going to get used to it, or just your psyche too. And it might make it a little bit more easy, because if you know you need to go to the grocery store, you need to do it. But you're sitting down and you're doing something, you might not just think, "Oh, let's go to the grocery store," especially if the lights are bright, or you get paralyzed because you want everything and you buy too much stuff, or you're not sure what to buy, or all that stuff. So if you already have a routine, it's going to minimize the decision paralysis and a little bit of the transition. And then number 12, this is huge, probably the biggest one. Talk kindly to yourself. So I mean, me, right? I'm all about this. I know all the tools, I know everything. And you think I still have trouble with transition sometimes with everything I know? 100%, 100%. And sometimes I might have all the tools and I'm ready to go, and then it takes longer than I want. And so the best thing you can do is recognize that you're just having trouble with the transition, and remind yourself that, hey, that's okay. It's not a big deal, and it is going to get easier. I mean, because I stepped away from maps, right? I've been with maps for 7 years. This has been a big transition for me. It's big. And I've had days where I just feel like just kind of blah or depressed or whatever. And I realize it's because it's a change. I mean, it's a good change. I mean, I had to grieve some stuff, but it's a good change. But now there's way less structure in my day, and all this stuff. And so, sometimes it's just reminding yourself that it's not going to be like this forever, and that you will adapt, because you will. like even if you're just sitting there, your brain's gonna adapt. And then also if you're having a bunch of resistance to change or something like that, think of, I always like to use a kid, right? If a kid is, um, this is funny. Okay, so here's another story about baby Tyler. Swimming lessons. When I was a kid, my mom paid for swimming lessons. That jumping in that cold pool, I would not. Some swimming lessons I would not jump in at all because it was too much change, and we didn't know I had autism. Like that was a sensory nightmare to go for a cold pool. So I'd sit on the, sit on the deck. The beauty of it was like my mom was more nurturing, and she didn't make me feel bad about it, and she would help me like put my, so she didn't know I had autism, but she was very gentle with it. And I love swimming now, and I swim all the time. But if she would have forced me in, pushed me in, like made me feel shame, I would never want to swim at all because it would have been really traumatic. So don't throw yourself in the pool and traumatize yourself if you just can't. Like if you can't do it, it's better to say, well, can you put your feet in? What if you go with your hand? Why are you going slow? Okay. And some days you just won't, and other days you're going to get in gradually and it's going to be good. So thankfully she was very nurturing, and I love to swim. I actually did a triathlon. So thanks, Mom. So yeah, just again, be gentle with yourself, be curious. There's a time to give yourself tough love, but it's not when you're dysregulated, because you're just going to dysregulate yourself more. Trust me. So that is my list that I have for today. Cool. Cool. Well, thanks. Again, this is so enjoyable. I know we're 10 minutes over, so it was just fun. Thanks for letting me talk and share and all of your contributions. And we'll see you in the Facebook group. So have a wonderful week. All right. Thanks, everybody.